Hi, this is the Energy Revolutions podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how radiation heroes, that is, scientists who were persecuted, managed to uncover uncomfortable, dangerous truths. My name is David Toke. I am author of Energy Revolutions, Profiteering versus Democracy, and this is being published by Pluto Press. More details from the Pluto Press website. But today I'm talking to Dr. Ian Fairlie, and we're focusing on two particular cases that he and his co-authors have written about of radiation heroes, scientists who've been persecuted. In his book, which is coming out soon, and we're going to be talking about Alice Stewart, a British scientist, and also Yuri Bandachevsky from Belarus. We'll start off with Alice Stewart. So, Ian, who is Alice Stewart?
Hi, David. Alice Stewart was a famous British epidemiologist who studied at University of Oxford in the mid-1950s, and she discovered that women who received an X-ray when they were pregnant, they produced children who died from leukemia.
My God.
Basically, the risk doubled for those people who received one X-ray. This was absolutely stunning news when it came out. And indeed, many people in the government and the medical establishment just refused to believe it initially. But gradually it began to sink in that radiation was actually very dangerous, that small doses of radiation killed little kids. It's really quite a shocking story.
So immediately medical practices was changed?
Oh, no. It took the medical establishment didn't want to know this, and they instead they attacked her, and they attacked her work, criticized her work. And but she was a doughty fighter. She was very sure of her work, and let's face it, the work that she had done, she had 16,000 cases, was watertight. It was absolutely rock solid science. It's just that the medical profession in Britain, many males, couldn't really accept this, and they went to great lengths to deny her work, and criticized it for years and years and years. Funny enough, what happened in the United States was that the Food and Drug Administration cottoned on right away, more or less right away. There was still a little bit of resistance, but
how long did it take in Britain for things to change?
An additional 20 years after the
20 years?
Yes, 20 years.
That's astonishing.
Not very good, is it? But it took that length of time for the medical establishment to accept that what she was doing, which her findings were correct.
What happened to her career?
Well, basically, she was hounded out of Oxford University, and she had to go to the University of Birmingham, accepted her. But even there, she had very lowly status. She worked in a portakabin, and all her records were kept in an underground passageway between two buildings. Not really very ideal at all.
Blimey.
But she worked away for about 35 years or so, and kept refining her work and kept publishing it. And eventually, here in Britain, it was accepted that her work, her findings were correct, and that radiation really is very dangerous indeed.
Well,
but she's just one. In our book, detail.
Can we stick to her for the moment? I understand that although she appeared to have her findings accepted in America, there's another important piece of research that she did that wasn't immediately accepted in America. That was about the Hanford nuclear military establishment. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It seems to be that people find it difficult to accept bad findings in their own country. They'll accept bad findings abroad. It's true, because what happened was that when she published, her and her colleagues published her findings in Britain, of course, traveled across the Atlantic, and a whole bunch of American scientists saw her work, and one in particular, a guy called Dr. Mancuso, had been working for the Department of Energy in the United States in Hanford nuclear reprocessing site, military reprocessing site in Washington State, not Washington, D.C., Washington State out on the West Coast. And they wrote to her and said, come to the United States and see what's going on at Hanford. And so she went, and Mancuso and Stewart found an even larger, shocking increase in ill effects, particularly in cancers and leukemias, in the workers at Hanford. These are nuclear workers at Hanford. And when they wanted to publish that, the American Department of Energy came after them. And came after them and persecuted them, tried to take their case files away, and published negative studies, published ad hominem attacks against Stewart and Mancuso. Of course, what happened was that when Alice came back to England, she brought with her all copies of the files from Hanford, so they could work in peace in Britain. That's what happened. Mancuso came over to England, and they worked together, and they published their results. And again, they found very large increases in cancers, all cancers, and leukemias, and heart effects, particularly strokes. And this was attacked very strongly by the military and nuclear establishment in the United States.
But more recently, it's been generally accepted.
Well, yes, both, but particularly in Britain, Alice Stewart's work has been vindicated. The main authors who had written against her, there was a guy called Professor Richard Dahl. He has admitted that he was wrong.
The smoking guy, the guy who uncovered the lung cancer effects of smoking.
Yeah, he was regarded as being one of the, a real hero, a British hero. In fact, he was knighted. He became a sir for his work. But he also denigrated Alice Stewart very badly. In the end, towards the end of his life and her life, he apologized to her and accepted that she was right.
What happened to Alice Stewart? I mean, I would imagine that somebody who did all this research would have become a professor very quickly.
But no, she wasn't. She was denied her professorship until almost just a year before she died. She was given an honorary professorship in recognition of the fact that her work was right. But so for 50 years, she was denied her true professorship status. 50 years.
That's pretty bad. But we go on to that second person we're looking at. I mean, he was treated even worse at Yuri Bandachevsky.
Yes, he was
a scientist in Belarus. Anyway, tell us more about it.
He was a radiation biologist and working for the Belarus government, and then for about 5 years before Chernobyl nuclear accident occurred. And when it occurred, he was stunned, and he offered help the Belarus government. They refused his help, and he went ahead and helped anyway. He took blood samples and body tissues from people who had died as a result of the accident, and he found that they all had very high levels of cesium, radioactive cesium-137. And he found that, in fact, there was a very strong correlation between, or as we say, an association between high cesium levels in bodies and in blood, and resulting very bad effects.
What was the Belarusian government's response?
To trump up charges of treason and terrorism against them. And,
Good grief.
oh, yes. And they put him.
I understand. I understand that people made allegations of bribery against him, but allegations were later retracted. Is that right?
Yeah. Basically, the government tracked down some people who were willing to make these baseless accusations against them for money, against him. And
this is according to Amnesty International, all this, yes?
Yeah. And they later on they retracted their evidence, but the court sentenced him to 10 years in a military prison. Oh, which the conditions there were horrible. And he spent 5 years in jail in Belarus. And the rest of the world were astonished at this, because basically he was being imprisoned for his scientific credentials, for his scientific finding, which the Belarus.
So he served five years, and then what happened?
He was let out. By the way, one of the reasons why he was let out was because his wife, Reina, persecuted the Belarus government, wrote to the government and to the president every day, demanding that he be freed. And they just basically, she was like a terrier, and I think it was mainly because of her that he got out early.
Right. And
he was invited by the city of Clermont-Ferrand in the center of France to go work at their main hospital. The reason being is that he had done some work for them before Chernobyl occurred.
All right. So, this is in nuclear-dominated France.
I know. That's amazing. But it's nuclear-dominated in the center, not in municipalities.
So, and a lot of other municipalities supported him from France?
Yes. Not only did Clermont-Ferrand give him the freedom of the city, made him an honorary citizen of Clermont-Ferrand, but 22 other cities in France, including Paris. Now, you're going to ask the question, well, Paris, that's the center of national government. Yes, but it wasn't the national government that gave him the freedom of Paris.
Paris, the city. Yes. Well,
it's the city.
Anyhow, in your book, you talk about 22 other scientists, nuclear heroes who are persecuted and pushed around in various ways. What's the name of the book, and when's it likely to come out? Who's publishing it?
Well, the name of the book is The Scientists Who Alerted Us to Radiation Dangers and were Persecuted Because of It. That's the title. And it's coming out, it's being published next year by the Ethics Press here in Britain.
Great stuff. Well, my book, Energy Revolutions, Profiteering versus Democracy, will be published by Pluto Press, and you can see more details on the Pluto Press website. So bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye.